May 2017, Damascus, Maryland. Kendall Zamet is a 17-year-old high school student living a normal life with her mother, Cecelia. She is in the band and enjoys playing and hanging out with friends, but everything is about to change.
I woke up one morning feeling pretty crummy. I had an awful headache, sore throat, and a cough. But I had a chem test today, so my mom made me go. She made me some hot chocolate and I went to school.
But as she went through the day, her symptoms worsened.
I just felt so awful, so after my chem test, I called my mom and she picked me up and took me to the doctor.
The doctor wasn't terribly concerned, figuring it was just a cold going around.
Fluids, always good. Non-alcoholic. No caffeine, water. And then get rest. And sleep. And
So there's a difference there
Yes.
between rest and sleep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
One, you do while your mother's asking you to do chores. That's rest. Sleep is what you do when you have homework.
You're right.
Alright. Take this to CVS, and I'll see you after you die.
He prescribed sleep, fluids, and painkillers. We were so relieved. It was just a cold or the flu.
But things were about to get much worse.
That night I was lying in bed, resting and watching TV when I started to have a lot of trouble breathing, and I couldn't seem to get warm. I shouted for my mom and she came running. She felt my forehead, then took my temperature.
It was 102, so they rushed to the emergency room. Because of the fever and breathing difficulty, doctors suspected it was bronchiolitis.
Bronchiolitis, or bronchitis, is an infection that inflames the airways, or bronchioles, in the lungs. It can be caused by a number of viruses and causes cough, fever, runny nose, and difficulty breathing. Because it is a viral infection, antibiotics are not effective against it.
So the doctors decided to keep Kendall overnight for observation, but things took a turn.
That night, she woke up and she looked confused and scared. She was looking around the room saying, "Where am I? Where am I?" I started to walk over and she just started shouting, "Get off me! Someone help!" I was so scared. I ran to get her a nurse. They had to restrain her and...
After this episode, doctors began to get concerned, so they called in infectious diseases specialist Lisa Volkatitis.
My first course of action was to ask her if she'd been out of the country recently.
Okay, you're good. And I had. I went on a spring break trip to China.
Immediately, I thought SARS.
SARS, or severe acute respiratory syndrome, is an incredibly infectious viral disease. It can cause fever, headache, dry cough, difficulty breathing, and even hallucinations. SARS is caused by a coronavirus that targets the epithelial cells in the nose, throat, and mouth. Given that it causes difficulty breathing, the lack of oxygen can cause organ failure and even death. Dun, dun, dun. Okay.
We were terrified. You hear of these things happening to other people, but it wasn't supposed to happen to us.
Doctors immediately administered a course of anti-inflammatory drugs to bring down the immune response and put Kendall on oxygen to assist breathing.
Our next concern was how far it had spread. SARS is extremely contagious. We contacted the school and found that 12 other students had come forth with the same symptoms. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was an outbreak.
So scientists contacted the school, which closed down for 2 weeks to deep clean, and 6 students were urged to go to the hospital.
Thankfully, no one else got infected, and the outbreak was over.
Kendall is now mostly healthy, but the infection has left its mark.
My lungs were severely damaged by the infection. I can no longer play the French horn, because I don't have the lung capacity, but I try not to let that define me.
So how did Kendall get SARS? Well, it's incredibly contagious and very common in China. And while it's spread by saliva and mucus, it can also be spread by certain animals in the area, such as raccoon dogs and ferret badgers. Kendall admitted to petting a raccoon dog on a hike and remembers it licking her. So in order to avoid a SARS infection, be very careful in areas where the virus is common. Don't share food or drinks, and wash your hands often, and especially avoid petting the wildlife. Antibiotics have... What? I was doing so well.
Sometimes I take bread and butter pickles and dill pickles, and I just mix them together. I'm like, which one am I gonna get? Hey!
We gotta be,
You have to be so serious, Justin.
outbreak was over.
Oh, whoops. They're having some technical difficulties right now.
I'm being abused by my child.
You're right.
I'm just like zooming in on Kendall right now.
Just let me take care of you. I need to go to the hospital. Get up. Get up. We need to go to the hospital. It's not part of the script. Okay.